All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Agents of M.A.C.E. Today, it's finally here. We're going to talk about Loki, the first episode. It was amazing. So many great things. I'm so excited. I'm more excited for this show than any of the ones that have come out so far. And I think it's just because I know that it's like leading into like the next phase, but also I don't know, it's so different than the other ones. It's more enticing.
They said ahead of time that this was going to be the spectacle show, and we're already seeing that first episode. Yeah. We barely even left the TVA, and we're already seeing spectacle.
Yeah, lot of things going on. I've got to say, like, I'm excited, but this is one, like, 6 episodes. I'm almost a little nervous of where this could go because it almost seems a little too simple. But maybe, like, I don't know, maybe that's the illusion. Is like you think it's like we're literally going to, like, use Loki to go more or less find Loki, is what they're thinking or saying. And it just seems like, okay, well, that seems pretty straightforward. Like, how do you do 6 episodes of that? So, like, what's going to happen? And, like, what more is going to be, unfolding as we go along? But I'm excited to talk about this one because there's a lot that happened.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all watched this earlier this week. It was either on Good Morning America or Jimmy Kimmel. It was one of those two, but they interviewed Tom Hiddleston and they asked him, no, it wasn't them. It was the comic book people. Anyways, one of his interviews, they asked him which episode he was most excited for people to see. And he said the end of episode 4 and beginning of episode 5. The show takes a huge leap. So we have to be
great
patiently waiting to see what he could be talking about.
I agree. When I saw it was a shorter, where I feel like they're sticking to these 6 episode things, and I get it because you don't want it to be too long. Because I could easily see out of all of them, I could see this show being the Monster of the Week show where they have a bunch of filler episodes. If it were like a 10 to 12 episode series, I could see that where we would fall into that dangerous territory of like, well, we don't really have anything else to show you, so we'll show you this. But at the same time, seeing the semi-disaster that was the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's like, don't do this to yourselves. Like, give yourself, like, episode 5 and 6 better both be the end of the show, so that they can, like, fully wrap things up. I don't want another, like, hodgepodge thrown together ending, just kind of, like, shoving some characters under the rug.
That victory lap episode.
Yeah. Like, just make sure that you're using your time wisely if you're only going to use 6 episodes. Well, I guess we can jump into the beginning of this episode. Because right off the bat, sure enough, like we talked about, it picks up right where we left off with this iteration of Loki. I do want to note the sort of similarity between him when he teleports away and it shows him like arcing out of the sky and crashing in the ground and all the stuff like flies around him. It's very similar to where it all began, with Iron Man flying out of the cave in his thrown together suit and crashing onto the ground and all the pieces going everywhere. So I thought that was a fun little sort of callback. I don't know if they meant it to be that way. That's certainly kind of how I took it.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's a good point. Yeah, so circling back, like, the Avengers intro sequence was so much fun. Like, I'm so glad they did that. Even though it, in a way, it almost feels like that's just time that could have been used to do some other cool Loki-focused stuff. But I think that's the perfect setup because it's just a good nostalgia throwback, which we get a lot of. But yeah, I think that nod's probably important because, you know, you look at that, if you look at the Iron Man perspective, I mean, that was really the start of like Tony's journey going into Iron Man. So could this be the start of something new for Loki? Is this Loki's like true mission, whatever he's about to go on, whatever this journey is, this is the start of something truly incredible? And everything before this was just him trying to figure himself out, you know?
I think so. I also saw a ton of parallels with the first Thor, where Thor also falls out of the sky, lands in the desert, and doesn't have powers.
Yeah.
So he's getting the Thor treatment.
Pretty much.
I will say that I was a little bit confused why Loki, who can teleport himself anywhere, teleported himself to then fly out of his, whatever you want to call it, teleportation hole, so high above the ground and then crash into the ground so hard. It just seems like that's not, like, Loki's cool. Loki's suave. Why would he intentionally, like, panic, disapparate, and reappear miles above the Earth?
That's a good
to
point.
Then crash land.
I wonder if we'll get. Yeah, it could be just that, as like he's feeling rushed and he just needs to. He knows he needs to get out of that one particular scenario, and he doesn't necessarily care. He's like, just teleport me somewhere, I don't care, and just throw me. But unless we'll get some sort of behind the scenes there, because this is kind of breaking that core timeline. So I wonder if because he's doing that, things happen a little differently.
Right.
Maybe he's just like, get me out of here.
I kind of was like, maybe it has something to do with him being like bound. Like maybe that, like, I don't know. I was trying to rationalize it in my head, but also I was like, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like he's cooler than that. Could have at least like superhero landed or something. I don't know. Well, so he lands in the desert, and immediately the time agents or Minutemen all just show up, squat up. You hear all this like metal clicking as they light their sticks up, and they take him in and they revert time there, which I thought was really cool. And I'm glad that it was explained a little bit later, because in my mind I was like, wait, so they just like wipe this timeline?
It's like they
do like
they Men in Black it, right? Essentially, that's what they're doing, just
the entire Earth.
Yeah, like we don't really know the true power of these things. Is it basically covers the entire planet, or is it just in that one particular area? I don't really know.
Right.
Yeah.
It would seem that it would do it to the entire planet, because in Miss Minute's little spiel about like what exactly a variant is, they kind of talk about how like they have to go in and basically erase that variant timeline to only have the prime timeline going. So, but then I started thinking, well, okay, the Avengers go back in time. So if you went and erased this variant time and reset it back to the main time, wouldn't the same thing still happen? Because the Avengers go back in time and Loki gets the cube and would disappear. So like now there's just this constant like variant timeline popping up. Like I mean, time's a confusing thing to begin with as a human. So let alone trying to figure out a way to write it into a show about time variants. But I was a little like, this seems kind of like an answer that like maybe they're just like, no, that yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably gonna be a lot of that stuff that's just gonna be like, just go with it. Like, this is how it works. You believe us, like, it's okay.
Yeah. It's the same attitude I've had to have with every TV show or movie I've ever watched that's ever dealt with time travel or parallel universes. It's just like wibbly wobbly, Jeremy Bearimy, you get used to it. Just whatever they say, trust it. It's kind of, it'll be fine. Just shh.
Well,
Try to
I
believe so.
wrote a bunch of notes down and literally had to go back through as the episode was happening and like go back up and be like, okay, well they answered that, they answered that. I don't have to talk about that anymore because they answered that. But a lot of my questions that I was writing had to do with, okay, so the TVA gets the Tesseract, and I was like, oh my God, TVA is the Tesseract. And then later I started thinking, I was like, I wonder if they have any other Infinity Stones, and if so, how many Infinity Stones can exist at one time? And then what, like halfway through the episode, we find out that they have so many Infinity Stones that people just use them as, as paperweights on their desk. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, forget it. I thought that was going to be a bigger thing.
Did you notice whenever they got in, the Tesseract immediately like stopped glowing as much? Like it's useless there.
No,
like the Tesseract is useless.
Exactly. You can't do anything there. Like Loki can't use his powers. It's like everything's kind of stripped. So it's really fascinating. Like curious to like how that is being controlled. You know, like who created this place? And like, you know, like, are we going to kind of get more into that? Like, could it be like, is it the timekeepers? Is this place created by them and they have the power to like remove power? I'm curious to see where that's going to go.
Well, I did a little research on that because I was like, well, who are the timekeepers? Like, what are the timekeepers? And I found some cool things. So the timekeepers are essentially exactly what they are explained in the show. They are just in control. They're like not bad guys, but they're not good guys. And in fact, in the comics, they actually tried to disassemble the Avengers at one point by throwing a bunch of stuff at them before they realize, hey, the Avengers could probably beat us in a fight. Maybe we should leave them alone. But a fun thing too was when he has to walk through the little metal detector and he's like, hey, are you a robot or like any part robot? And he's like, no, I don't think so. So that's actually kind of a nod to the Minutemen, which are the TVA. I think they're different in the comic, but they're pretty much the same as the TVA. They're in control of making sure the timeline stays correct. And they are actually robots. So you kind of see it a couple times in the show that like maybe they're hinting at the fact that everyone that lives here and works here is a robot, because think about the secretary guy at the desk who has to take the stuff back, and then he's like, oh, I was born behind the desk and have lived my whole life behind the desk, and you're like, well, that doesn't make sense, he doesn't know what a fish is. But it's like, well, maybe he's a robot, maybe they're all robots, and they don't want you to be a robot coming in as a variant because you could affect all of them. So I don't know. I thought that was a cool, maybe that was a nod to like the Minutemen. They call them Minutemen at one point in the show. So I was like, the Minutemen, they actually first appeared, I wrote it down because I'm trying to think harder now, in the Fantastic Four issue number 352. That was the first time that we get to see the actual Minutemen. So I thought that was another, like, there's all these little things that are popping up that are like, could they be something? Could they just be like a nod? I feel like we got a couple just nods in the last two shows, but also we had a couple things that were like, what are you doing to me, Marvel?
The robot part was like, it was really funny. Like he's like, do a lot of people just not know that they're robots? But it bummed me out a little bit because, you know, he didn't know he was a frost giant for like 1,000 years. And so maybe he's like, hold on. Maybe I do need a minute to think through this.
It's possible. So I wanted to know if either of you, what are your thoughts on Loki, air quotes, Loki, that they're trying to find? Do you think it's actually Loki? Because I feel like it's not. But when my fiance and I were watching it and they were like, oh, the person we're hunting is you, she was like, duh. Like the devil in the picture that the girl pointed to was wearing a green cloak with horns. Like they're looking for Loki. But in my mind, I was like, if it was Loki, why, when we saw the figure later, we never saw who it was? If it was Loki, why wouldn't they just show us that it was Loki? I don't understand telling us who it is and then trying to mislead us that that's not who it is. So now I'm like, I don't think it is Loki. But I just kind of wanted to see
I
what
have
you're
a couple
thinking.
of like, yeah, I got two competing theories, and it's because they've cast a couple of actors we haven't seen yet. One is Sophie DiMartino, I think that's her name, and the other one is Richard E. Grant. And I think I've mentioned Richard E. Grant before because he's a fantastic British actor, and he also looks like if you just pushed fast forward on Tom Hiddleston like 30 years. And so I think it could be an old version of Loki. I read Agents of Asgard a long, long time ago, but if this is an actual plot point that I'm not making up, there was an old version of Loki who met up with a younger version and convinced him that either he or Kid Loki, I can't remember which one, were going to wind up being just as evil as he was no matter what they did.
Okay.
And so that could be it. It could be future extra evil, mean Loki, Richard E. Grant. Or if it's Sophie DiMartino, she could be playing a girl version of Loki. And so I think maybe that's why they didn't show like even a jawline or anything like that, is because they're trying to hide the fact
I
that it's a
really
woman.
like that because, I mean, we are leading into this multiverse theory, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm 100% on board with it being like a gender swapped Loki or an older version of Loki to say like he's a variant from a different like way in the future or something. But at the same time, it's like, well, he couldn't be a variant from the future, right? Because when Loki was watching his videotape of his life or whatever, he got to see the death, which is something I wrote. So like that was confirmed. Loki died, dead, gone. So I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of an old man Loki. I just
Old man Logan. So I've got a few thoughts on this. So the first thing, of course, being what they've been teasing since WandaVision, and that's Mephisto. You know, because it's like clearly they're showing like this, they're pointing out this devilish picture, and that's basically what he is. He's essentially the devil, a demon. And it's like, come on now. Like, are we going to see him or not? Like, my theory is that's got to be the main villain in the next Doctor Strange movie. I feel like if they're throwing so many clues at this point, that's who they have to be leading up to battle with. But to the point y'all made earlier, it's the same thing. It's like if you look at Loki when he wears his helmet from a distance, yeah, he would kind of look like this potentially devilish being with these horns. So it's possible that it could have been Loki. I did not know anything about Lady Loki. I had to research that, which I found that was really fascinating. It could be a way to go. This is the first I've heard of Old Man Loki, which could be another possible thing. The other thing, this is kind of looking at the details around that final scene with all the various time-related technology, is could it be Kang the Conqueror? Because this could be another thing leading up to Quantumania if Ant-Man and the Wasp will fight Kang. So,
well, didn't they already say that Kang will be the villain in that?
Yeah, I think they did. So this is kind of like, could they be going ahead and setting that up? Maybe. But now that we're talking about this, the Old Man Loki seems really interesting, and I could see them going more in that direction.
Well, they do already have a connection with Kang. The time judge that dispenses Loki's thing. She is the daughter of the Emperor of Earth. Oh my God, I should do this from memory. 164.
Well,
I don't know. Fact check. But she's the daughter of the Emperor from that Earth that Kang spared because he was in love with her. So there's already a connection with Kang in this show.
Right. Yeah. And I had a note about that because I thought that was really fascinating, I saw like her character, I was doing research. She debuted in a 1965 Avenger issue, But my question there is, are we going to see her like in every episode? Is she gonna be essentially like this power broker type character? Like,
Right.
do we know if she's good, if she's bad, or is that just basically her job in this series, and that's where we'll always see her?
Right. And that's the thing, is like these little things that could just be nods, but also like some of them are kind of big nods.
Sure.
Like you're introducing this character that plays an actual role in this other storyline. So are we supposed to think that she's going to come back? Sort of like the lady with 16 names from Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like, she's clearly an actual character in the grander MCU, if you will. So the fact that she's in this show, it's like, okay, well, that's not just a nod. She's actually in Black Widow. So I don't know. I feel like that's why I love Marvel stuff so much, because every time I think I know, and then they hit me with a, no, you didn't know.
Yeah.
We had these other 6 things. You're oh.
If anything, like, I could just see them bringing her back, like, maybe as a post-credit in the finale to connect, like, Kang in some way. Of like, maybe we never see Kang. Maybe we just see a clip of her, talking with Kang to kind of set that up. I could see them doing that.
I did want to say really quick before we get away from that scene, just of Loki's trial. Shout out to my fiance. She, while we were watching it, she was like, "Do you see the hidden Mickey?" And I was like, "No." Right behind Loki that entire time is each of the floors has a big number that's plastered on the wall, and it's a 3, but the 3 is just in the right spot where it makes the top half of a hidden Mickey. So it's like, okay, Disney, I see you sneaking in a hidden Mickey in there. So yeah,
now I gotta go back and look.
Needs to see that.
I need to go back and look for all the numbers, because I've watched this episode twice, and when you get to what's his name, his office, Owen Wilson's character. Mobius. That's right, Mobius. When you get to his office, his number is 25, I believe. I kept looking at that, trying to like figure out what kind of clue that could mean.
Oh, every time I see the elevator, we see it twice, I think, in the episode, and every time I pause it and I'm like trying to make all these wild connections between the letters for each floor, because it's like there's something there.
Oh, sure.
This is just like Winter Soldier's list. Like, there's no way that all of these letters don't mean either character names or people that were part of the show or something. Like, we don't know yet. So someone out there probably knows, whoever did it.
It's like they really want you to put you to work for all the hidden things, because if you look at, like, especially if you look at the elevator, if you look at the credits, it's filled with just these random letters and numbers. And I was just like, do I really want to pause and write all these down? Because they mean something, but they're putting everyone to work now.
My only other thing that I had a problem with in this episode was, so we get to see Loki kind of seeing what happens after he would have been captured and taken back to Asgard. And so he kind of gets to see the events that play out in Dark World, the events that play out in Endgame. And so it's kind of cool. Like, okay, here he is getting to see all these things. Well, but one of the things that they make a point to show him was him killing Coulson. And Mobius even says, basically, like, hey, you killed this guy. Like, do you feel bad about it? And all I could think was, well, but we know Coulson didn't die, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. canonically is connected to the MCU. And this would have been the perfect time to throw an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference. And just be like, it could have even been like a haha, like, well, you only thought you killed him. And then show like a quick little thing of Coulson, like, doing something in Agents of Shield. It's just like, why Disney? Why are you pretending, or Marvel? I don't know whose decision it was, but why are you pretending that this show that you made that was supposed to be connected to the movies doesn't exist? They're just like, no. We don't talk about Agents of Shield. It's like, I mean, yes, I think I said it before. It gets weird if you watch all of Agents of Shield, but it's still in the same universe. So like, just throw me a bone, throw them in there.
They could. I feel like this needs like a very political type answer though. It's just kind of like, yeah, we could, but like, we just don't want to put all the money towards all that.
Yeah, they don't want all the fans that are like, well, now I have to go watch this show. And it's like, you don't have to, but for those of us that did, it'd be nice to feel like it had a point.
Well, even...
But about this scene, though, they show him all the worst stuff he's ever done, followed by showing him like, oh, and also future you kills your mom, watches your dad die. Oh, and then you see this part? Yeah, Thanos just crushed you like a little bug wearing the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah. It was amazing acting. It was amazing to see him, like, all I could think is he must be holding his breath so hard, because as soon as you hear the snap and he finally breathes, it's like the first time he's ever breathed. Oh my God, it was so good. I was like, God, he's such an amazing actor to be in this comic book TV show about a comic book movie about a comic book. Like, wow.
Yeah, and it's Loki's first like proper cry. We've had lots of scenes where he's done the thing where his eyes just like kind of fill up with tears, but then nothing really happens because he's got to front a little bit. But in this one, he's just like full on sobbing, and I was like, oh no. But then whenever he watches Thor make that little joke and it makes him laugh in the middle of that was my favorite moment in the whole episode.
Oh yeah,
so good. This was his equivalent of that Bucky scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
We're just gonna get that at the very beginning.
Just knock out the hard part first.
That's gotta, you gotta be thinking like that's such a heavy thing for him to look at, and that's such a tough choice. I mean, like if anyone was in a situation where you had the power, the ability to look into the future to see what happens to you, to essentially see like. Because, that's probably what was killing him. It's like, I got to know, like, do I become like this big person that I'm trying to be and rule everyone and everything? Nope, complete opposite.
Yeah, you lose over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's got to be a big contributing factor for why he decides that he can, or we have to assume he's going to decide that he'll help them in what they're planning to do, because he doesn't have a place in his own timeline anymore. That timeline leads him to dying, even if it is in a, kind of redemptive fashion. And also, he's discovered that the TVA really is, or it seems to be, the greatest authority in the universe. Like y'all were saying earlier, they're treating Infinity Stones like they're paperweights. Like, if he's wanting to, like, I kind of think, and I want to know what you guys think about this. I think he might still be kind of thinking, this might be what I need to get to where I want to be. This is an even better step than he was on before, because this is where it really seems to end. There is no higher authority than the TVA. And so if he can somehow elevate himself there, then who could stop him? Who could say anything about him? So that's the bad version of Loki that could do that. But maybe he's genuinely like, hey, I can be nice, like that one that tried to save my brother there at the end, only to die.
Yeah. Since we're talking about the whole Infinity Stone things, like first seeing that, you see there's a Soul Stone, and it's like, so is it all for nothing in the end? Like, people that went after the Soul Stone, did they really have to die? Like, could have there been another way? If these are all just lying around at the TVA, they could have just...
And they don't work at the TVA, but if you were to take them back to a different timeline, do they work again?
I would think so.
But then could you have two soul stones in the same at the same time?
See, that needs to
It's-
that needs to be a movie. Like, what happens when you have like 5 different people show up with all the Infinity Stones? Like,
The
what would
Red
happen?
Skull comes to get you.
Yeah,
Spooky.
I don't know, that one struck me. I was like, that's really interesting to see. You know, will we see these stones again? Will they get brought back up? I mean, feels like we won't, because they basically said, like, you know, out here, like, they're worthless, but you know what they can do if you're on, you know, outside of the TVA. So curious if that's in the back of Loki's mind. Like, I need to like grab me a pair of the stones, put them in my back pocket, and keep
Shove
them
them in
just
his pockets.
Which we can add this to the fact check too, but I wanted to see where you guys think the TVA is. I don't know that much about them, so I don't know if it is something that has been answered before. But in my mind, the TVA is like the end of time, like where time ends, and then the next step is where the TVA exists. Because he says, you know, constantly, like, time works differently here. And it's like, oh, okay, is that a time joke, or is it work differently because you guys are at the edge of time? Or there's always the quantum realm stuff. So, like, is the TVA a part of the quantum realm? And, like, that's where it exists, in the quantum realm. So, like, because I think Scott says time works differently in the quantum realm. So it's like, okay, well, now there's this whole other pocket dimension inside of a dimension that the TVA could exist, which, like, could maybe this show, like, in my mind, this show is leading us to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but maybe this show isn't. Maybe this show really is just leading straight to Ant-Man and Quantumania. Like, there's a diverging path here that the show needs to either lead to one or the other, because I feel like if they're trying to lead to both, it's going to be too much crazy like time and quantum realm and all this information of all these fake sciences that, like, now we're all trying to comprehend. Like, hold on, whoa, hold on. So there's a tiny place that works different, and there's the different multiverses that don't have anything to do with it. It's like this too much for the average viewer to digest.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I feel like there needs to be there's got to be an episode where they try to explain to Loki how everything works, and it's like potentially it's gonna go good or bad. It's gonna be like one, like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch this like 5 times, or they'll do it in such a brilliant way where it just clicks. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Are either of you Star Wars fans?
Yeah.
All right, so it'll be like the Clone Wars, where it's like, here's a world building episode where we're just going to explain everything to you, and nothing really happens, but, like, here's all the information you need.
Have either of you seen Dark? Okay, if you're into like real like I would call it real sci-fi, time looping, time travel, watch that. It is bonkers. It's 3 seasons, and it's some of the most confusing yet brilliant stuff I've ever watched. It's so good. But yeah, like there's so many. These are the kind of episodes where it's like, what did I just watch? Like, this is blowing my mind.
I'll add that to my list.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm all about it.
It's really good.
Speaking of bonkers time altering issues, and sticking with the same scene that we were talking about, my favorite part of this entire episode was when we find out that Loki is DB Cooper. That was the most exciting moment for me in the whole show. And not only that, it wasn't just like she turned around and said, like, of course, Mr. Cooper, and then that was it, like, wink, nod.
Yeah.
Instead, they showed us his entire escapade that he went on.
Yeah.
Like, hanging out on the plane with his sunglasses, flying away, opening the back door, jumping out, which, like, why would he? That was weird. He could poof away. Why did he take the time to jump out of the plane? But I was like, oh my God, Loki is DB Cooper. And that's my new answer to what happened to DB Cooper. He's Loki. He was Loki.
Duh. I do like that they included a couple of really real references to that case because, one, they never found a body. They never found out who DB Cooper was. And the other one was they found some of his money. And so that part whenever it shows the dollar bills raining back down that didn't get zapped up, I was like, oh, that's the money they found.
Oh, it was so good. That was by far my favorite part of the whole episode.
This whole like thing blew my mind. So like I wanted to talk about this for sure because like at the very beginning after Loki gets away and then he's in the desert when the TVA agents all first get there to bring him in. There's one that's like, I think he's like on the, if you're watching, he'd be like on the far left. To me, it looked like John Hamm. I was like, oh, whoa, was that John Hamm? Did he get like a little like cameo role? So I looked it up and he wasn't in this. That's when I saw like he voices in MODOK. But like when they did the whole DB Cooper thing. So Mad Men's my favorite show. But someone put out like the best fan theory that like Don Draper was DB Cooper. And like that's where they were gonna they were leading up to like him basically, because like if you haven't seen Mad Men, like this huge spoiler, but like he's not Don Draper, he's someone else becomes Don Draper. So it was basically like taking that same thing and he was gonna become DB Cooper. And it was so brilliantly written. I was just like, holy crap, this would work. I hope they do this, which of course they didn't. So I don't know, like this whole moment is gonna be special to me because like I just think it was great.
I really hope that it happens more throughout this show, that we get these like fun little like unsolved mysteries that turned out to be like, oh, that was Loki.
Yeah.
Like he was just messing with people.
What bet did he lose?
Oh yeah, because he's like, yeah, I lost a bet to Thor. Oh my gosh, there has to be like a little mini series or like they got to start doing those extra credits where you actually see the interaction with Thor and Loki of like making the bets.
But that's a possibility. Like now we're to the point where we're not doing shows with B characters from the movies where they get their own spin-off show and it's like, well, no one really cares. It's like, no, these are like main characters in the MCU are having their own show. So like it's completely possible that he runs into Thor at some point. So here's hoping, I guess. Like, I mean, bring someone else in.
Chris Hemsworth was on a Marvel set all last year, so
right.
I mean, they just wrapped filming on Love and Thunder, so they could have filmed something with him, and just like a possible connection to Multiverse of Madness. During another one of those 400 interviews Tom Hiddleston did this week, they were asking him about his 40th birthday and what he was doing on the day he turned 40. And he said, I was on set filming Loki, which is also where I was whenever I turned 30 10 years ago. And, that was just kind of neat. But then somebody pointed out that Loki supposedly finished filming in December. And so it could be, of course, that they were just doing a few reshoots or things like, you have to do for shows and movies. Or since he's been in London doing like a whole other TV thing, he could be in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've done weirder things. Does anyone watch Kim's Convenience?
It's on my list. I've heard a lot about it.
It's a fun show. But the guy that is going to be the lead in the Shang-Chi movie... He's in that show. He's the son. And the most recent season that just got added to Netflix, the whole first half of the season, his character participates in episodes virtually via Zoom because he's like out of the country, like in school or something. And I was like, oh, probably because he was filming this movie for Marvel, but also contractually was obligated to be in so many episodes that they were like, we'll build you like a fake office or maybe it was even his hotel room, I don't know, and they just sent him a computer and were like, you just call in and record your stuff. But so it's like you said, that if they just finished Love and Thunder, it's 100% believable that Loki could have been on set Disney and Marvel own both things. So one day they could have just been like, hey, by the way, today we're shooting that thing for Loki first, and then we're going to jump into scene 12 or whatever. So it's like, yeah, they were all there together. They could easily just
Put up that green screen, Sam.
I did want to talk about a couple more fun little Easter eggs that sort of popped up. One of them, I guess we'll start with because it happens in the scene as well. It's not really a Marvel Easter egg. It's just like a funny thing. The soda that they were drinking, Josta soda
Josta.
from the 90s.
Made by Pepsi.
There is a moment where we notice at the beginning of the episode they are in the 90s. And so it may just have been a quick callback to like, hey, that's where they were. But I don't know. I just thought that was like a funny, being a kid of the 90s, I thought that was a funny little like, oh yeah,
I don't even remember that soda at all. I'm curious if it's like, if that is a closer connection with something that happened with Mobius, or if it's a memory, or I don't know. Like, 'cause I'm curious if he always goes back in the 90s, he'd like just go buy some and then just bring it back with them. I'm curious if we'll see things like that again. But yeah, that was a little interesting.
Yeah, I'd like for it to be explained.
Yeah.
like or was it just a callback, or was it like they were like, hey Owen, like pick your favorite soda from your lifetime. Doesn't matter what time period it's from. And he's like, oh, Josta soda. Like, I don't know.
Maybe it's just one of those things. It's like, if you're in the TVA, you get to treat the sacred timeline as your own personal grocery store. If they've discontinued something, that don't matter to you. You want that Fruitopia? You got Fruitopia. You want the old school Dunkaroos? We got them.
Man.
Oreo O's?
Oreo O's.
Those cream savers?
The other big thing, this one is an actual big thing, was it has been mentioned twice now. Once in WandaVision and once in this first episode of Loki. But there was a commercial in WandaVision for Nexus. And they mentioned Nexus in Miss Minute's little spiel at the beginning. For anyone out there who doesn't know what a Nexus being is, Nexus beings have the ability to pretty much alter time. They can affect probability, which can change the prime timeline. And there are some big names on the list of known Nexus beings. Scarlet Witch is one. Jean Grey is one. I think Jean Grey might actually be on there twice from two different Earths. But these are like big players in the witchy power group of individuals. But there's a extensive list of Nexus beings. But them mentioning that twice now, it's like, okay, is this all just like a Scarlet Witch is a Nexus being, so we're going to keep throwing Nexus in there to be like, ooh, Nexus? Or is that going to have an actual impact on this show, being that Nexus beings can alter the timeline, and that's what this whole show is about, protecting the prime timeline. So I'm interested to see, like, maybe we find out that Loki is a prime, or is a Nexus being, seeing that now we know of at least two Lokis that have strayed from their prime timeline. So
I'm curious. I think Nexus is mentioned in some way in Age of Ultron as well. I'll have to go back and find that reference, but I had a note regarding that. So yeah, I'm interested to see where that's going to go. See what that could be leading up to.
Surely we're going to be getting lots of Nexus events in this series. Or maybe there's like a big one at the end of episode 4, and that's what they were talking about.
I really hope that this is Tom Hiddleston's like personal Loki joke, and that like the end of episode 4, like nothing really happens, or like he tells a funny joke.
It's like he's
The
gonna
only
tell a
other
knock knock
thing,
joke, but it doesn't get you don't actually get to hear the rest of the joke until the beginning of episode 5. I can see that happening.
the
Dang
Yeah.
it, Thomas.
the only, well, I guess I have two more things, but one I'm not really sure about, so I wanted to kind of see what you guys thought. But the first one was Owen Wilson's character, Mobius M. Mobius, which, what a name. I'm sure the M stands for Mobius.
Probably.
So he is an actual Marvel character, and he is in the Marvel timeline. He is this same thing. But he actually works himself up to being one of the time judges eventually. So we're getting to kind of, I guess, see him on his rise to power, because it does seem like he's at least high enough up where he's not a Minuteman. He can kind of do whatever he wants, and he's in charge of all these like squads. So I think that we're like, maybe at the end of this show, something will happen with, and I can't remember her name, but the time judge that we did see,
Ravonna.
Renslayer?
yes,
Renslayer,
yeah, Ravonna. So I'm thinking like maybe something will happen with her to have her leave that seat, and he will then become the time judge. So maybe we're like seeing those last little bit before he rises to time judge. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. The thing I wanted to kind of get your view on was, in the post credits, there is a moment where we see an open locker, and at the bottom of the locker there's a big poster, and I couldn't see what it said, and I just saw the person. The person is like a dark, almost like a bluish hue, and they have bright yellow eyes. And my first thought when I saw it, because I saw it and then it switched to the next thing, was, hey, was that Nightcrawler? Is that like for no real reason, a Nightcrawler reference? But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, that couldn't have been what it was. But also, I don't know. I kind of want to see if you guys saw that or what your thoughts are on that.
I didn't see that,
No,
but the gum had a blue face guy on it. The gum that the little girl
Kablooey?
in France, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Kablooey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like a
Kablooey. I think
creepy
that's like that was like
face.
the devil. Yeah. It was just kind of another nod towards that. No, I have to go back and rewatch that. Like, that's the problem with the credits for this show, is there's a lot to unpack in the credits, and it's hard to know like what could be a clue or hint or nod and what's not. So I'll have to go back and rewatch that. That may be something we need to do for the next episode, is spend time at the beginning just talking about the credits and what we think could be in there.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we joked about having a credit only episode for Falcon and Winter Soldier, and those credits were pretty straightforward.
Those were for sure.
The credits for this show are like blips of numbers and letters, and then like a quick screenshot of like a piece of paper with like full writing on it, and then that goes to someone at a desk, and then that goes to someone answering a phone, and then that goes to someone typing on a keyboard, and it's like, oh my gosh, so much stuff is happening. I can't keep track of what am I supposed to pay attention to.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Were there any other big moments that you guys really enjoyed or wanted to talk about for this first episode?
There were a couple of things I wanted to point out, and then one question I wanted to ask you guys. The first one is, I think I mentioned that I was noticing Doctor Who references earlier, that it's worse in this episode. Doctor Who is everywhere. Like, again, we see, I don't want to call it the naked gun or the defabricator. They don't tell us what it is. It's the laser gun that takes off the clothes, which, again, is something that's used on Captain Jack Harkness in Doctor Who. They talk about the space lizards. He's talking about the timekeepers, which, first of all, were they lizards? They didn't look like lizards. But in Doctor Who, there's a race called the Solarians, which are like a humanoid reptile species that everybody thinks are aliens, but actually they are the first Earthlings. And they're a huge deal on the newer episodes. And also there's a really great episode that's called Blink, and the doctor says that he's fighting 4 things and a lizard, so I have to assume it's a space lizard. But the biggest one was Casey, whenever he sees Loki come back, says, "You're the time traveler with the blue box." And I was like, okay, that's not even cute. You guys are just stealing at this point.
That went right over my head. But didn't you say that the writer and director for this show is a big Doctor Who fan?
I thought that Kate Herron probably was, because she's British, and she talks about how the show is basically like a love letter to the sci-fi that she grew up with, but she's never specifically mentioned Doctor Who. But come on. Michael Waldron, the head writer, he's American, but he's also close to like my age, and I watched Doctor Who a lot whenever I was like in college, so it might have been something that he did at about the same time. So he could be the one slipping in all these references and things. So who knows? Just again, it was kind of all over the place, and I'm going to be looking for even more as we get into the season. Have y'all seen this thing on the internet where they think they see Peggy being brought in under arrest at the TVA?
Oh no!
Yeah, it's in the background whenever Loki first escapes from his room. You can see a door open up, and they're leading through a woman who is dressed in like 40s looking clothes. She's got the same hairstyle that Peggy had. I try to go back and like look at that. I don't think it's Peggy. I just think it's just an extra. But I can see where people would think that, especially since we know that Cap went back and basically like relived his life with her. Like she got a total reboot.
I was just about to say, 100% that was Peggy, and it's all Steve's fault that she's a variant because he went back in time and screwed up the prime time.
That dance was all they got together.
How does that work?
They just come in and they're like, "We're taking this. You can't have it."
I believe it. That's my new favorite fan theory. Steve Rogers made a time variant on Peggy Carter.
And then she had to go to jail, and was like, "Oh, you're fine, honey. You stay there. Everyone loves you." And my question for you two was, do you think Loki is going to wind up either actually betraying Mobius, Mobius, not Morbius, it's a whole different thing, do you think he's going to try to and fail, or that he's going to do it full stop, or is that something that's a direction they're not going to go in with this character? The reason why I got suspicious that maybe that is something that's going to happen is because whenever Mobius is first talking to Loki, he talks about his lack of cooperation. He says, "Oh, you never cooperate, even whenever you're trying to get in with somebody so that you can," I can't remember how he puts it, but basically do something that's self-serving. Somebody who's in a position of authority. So I was like, that feels pretty foreshadowy to me. But that Mobius is also sharp enough to catch it. And I couldn't think of a specific time when Loki had done that before, but it seems very much in keeping with how he's done things before.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see him starting out good, then being swayed by this other Loki to maybe join with him, her, it, whatever. And, being Loki, he will probably go that direction for a little while. But then I think in the end, he will be like, well, no, like the prime me, sacrificed himself for his brother, so then he'll be good at the end. But I could definitely see him, maybe doing a little bit of backstabbing, just a little bit.
I could see them going in a very like traditional story type route where Loki will meet up with this hooded figure. I could see it being old Loki, and he's basically put in a position of like, you're going to have to make a decision. You need to make the smart one. They could set it up to where, like, based off of his decision, whether he backstabs someone or not, is if this is going to lead into the multiverse of madness, is Loki the one that creates it? And is it based off a decision that Loki, like, he's kind of putting, it's, if you backstab this person to try to escape or go do your thing, it's going to cause this effect. So I could see them going that route, which seems very cliche and typical, and it's been done before, but I don't know. That's going to be my answer. I think that I think they're going to back Loki in a corner and say, like, you're going to have two options. Choose wisely.
I hope he doesn't. They seem like they could be bros.
Well, that was one thing that my last note will be, what's in it for Loki? Like, apart from being reset, which I guess that's what's in it for him, right?
Yeah.
Not being reset. But he can't go back to his own timeline. I'm still going off the thought that everyone that works here is a robot. So he can't necessarily join the workforce here. So he doesn't have anywhere to go, really. So it just kind of, he doesn't, like, what's the pull for him to do this job?
I mean, it's got to
apart
be
from being reset.
He's going to have to try to figure out the technology that they have, or like everything that's around him, to determine if there's a way that he can manipulate time where he can either go back or go forward where he just won't die. I think that's got to be his motive. Is he, like, he knows if he goes back and to that thing, he's dead. Like, Thanos will kill him. So his goal is life, but he's trapped in this thing where time makes no sense. So that's what this series has got to be about. He's got to be trying to figure out, like, how do I use the technology that they have, or like whatever's going on, to construct something or find something that will put me in a position where I can go do what I want to do and live.
Speaking of the technology, whenever he looks out at the TVA and he says, "I thought you had no magic here," and I was like,
yeah,
"Why? You're from Asgard." You know
right?
that it's...
Yeah, it's curious to see, like, because I mean, all you really see is like flying cars, more or less. Like,
and they
that not
it's just
so
like
much
a space city.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. I wouldn't call that magic per se. I would just call that advancement in technology.
And he was on
and he's
Sakaar.
already seen that stuff.
Yeah,
he's already seen
So I'm curious if there's
stuff.
something going on there that we didn't actually see.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea, and I have had this weird thought that, like, maybe this Loki will somehow, maybe by doing this job, get permission to rejoin the main timeline, picking up where Loki died, and then that way it's like, okay, well, I think somewhere along the line someone was like, hey guys, Tom Hiddleston is a really good actor and we just killed him off so he can't be in any more movies. What are we gonna do? And then they were like, oh, we'll give him a show, we'll reintroduce him as, like, past Loki, and then he'll grow into a good guy, and then we'll reintroduce him into the movie line as, hey, look, Loki's back.
Yeah. That's another question I've got. I've got a few things on my list still, but one is, like, will we see the timekeepers? Is that part of what this could be leading up to? Is Loki's going to be, on this mission or whatever, or maybe he's put in a position, but whatever he does it get him to meet the timekeepers? Because I kind of feel like Loki would want to do that as well. He's like, if they keep getting brought up, he's got to be like, put me in front of them, because he likes to talk. He's going to want to try to, like, talk his way into let me live,
I think they're a low enough on the totem of, like, big characters in the MCU that they could throw them in here and just be like, ooh, here's the timekeepers, and they could have a quick scene where they speak to Loki about re-releasing him into the prime timeline or whatever.
Yeah.
But just as kind of like you all wanted it, here they are, the timekeepers, and then we never see them again.
Probably.
Or maybe they're in the Eternals too. I was kind of thinking, like, do you think we'll see them in the Eternals? But I didn't really find any real connection between them.
Or are they building up to Secret Wars?
Yeah. Maybe they're all Skrulls. Who knows?
There was a scroll in the lobby.
that was one of my notes. Is like, what do you think of the scroll at the very beginning?
Looks like he's in trouble.
It's like,
Yeah.
like I was just like,
I mean, that's it. See, and that's the thing is like we don't know what the next phase is. Like we still don't really know who the next big bad is for the MCU. Like every phase has a point.
Yeah.
And this next phase just kind of seems like all we know is like there's this Black Widow movie that was supposed to come out like feels like 2 years ago. Then there's Ant-Man and the Quantumania, which seems like it could be a whole phase in itself. But then there's also Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which seems like it could be a phase by itself. So it's like, well, who's the next big bad? Like, you're pulling us in so many different directions that it almost feels like, are we at Galactus? Like, is that what's going to happen? Is you're going to explain all these big things and then Galactus is going to come to eat Earth and like, now we all have to prep for Galactus? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if they've thought that far ahead.
I'm curious. But... I mean, it almost seems like they got to have someone in mind because I figured we're going to get a big baddie, like some big baddie question mark, and then after that will be like Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Since Fantastic Four is so far down the line.
Yeah.
Maybe Feige just has like a dartboard in his office with a bunch of villain names written on it. He's like, okay.
Yeah. Throwing a dart. Like, who are we going to fight this time?
Yeah, and they hit Morbius, and he was like, dang it.
We already have
we'll
a
just
Morbius.
make a Morbius movie.
Yeah. A couple, I guess, last two things on my list, and these kind of go back to like movie, TV show references or nods. Is one was Miss Minutes is voiced by Tara Strong.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool because Tara Strong voices like everybody.
Yeah.
So that was really fun.
Bubbles for all you 90s kids.
Yeah. And then the last one was the Scream quote. I'll gut you like a fish, Casey.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I'm curious to see what was the inspiration behind that.
Yeah. Like, was it an improvised line that just played really well and they kept it, or was it written that way?
I feel like it probably has to be because, like, if you look at a lot of the recent stuff that's come out from Thor Ragnarok, is like there's improvised scenes. So,
But see, that's the thing. If they're not robots, then 100% that was an improvised scene.
Yeah.
But if they're robots, then 100% that scene is supposed to be us realizing that the people that work there are robots. So it's, 50-50.
If it wasn't improv, him coming back with "What's a fish" is the best thing I've ever heard. What's a fish? How do you not know what a fish is?
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was interesting. So many of the nods in this first episode were so fascinating. It's like, what are we gonna see? 5 more episodes. Like, there's no telling what we're gonna get.
I hope they're longer. I felt like I was almost expecting this episode to be an hour long, and it was not too shy, but it was shy of an hour.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that's like with credits, so really it was 48.
We did get his famous
47.
quote, or like his kind of slogan. I wonder if we'll hear it anymore. Is "I am burdened with glorious purpose."
Also,
Yeah.
In the opening scene where he meets the people out in the desert, he goes and immediately puts himself on a little platform.
Right?
Yeah,
I liked that.
That was so funny.
He needed the high ground.
And that was the second time I watched it with my husband. He goes, "Of course."
He's got to talk to his...
It's got a little
subject.
audience.
All right, well, now that Loki is out and comes out on Wednesdays, Loki has played with our timeline. So our episodes will be coming out earlier as well. So we will be putting out episodes earlier, probably midweek. If we can, we'll get them out Wednesday night. If not, then Thursday or Friday. But we'll try to shoot for Thursdays. And hopefully be able to keep everyone on the up and up with all the exciting details of each week's episode. So be sure to join us next week. Don't forget to follow us on social. We've been posting a lot more. Thank you both. I'm super excited. I feel like every time I go on Facebook, there's a fun little post that I can look at. So be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram. I can't remember if the Twitter's up or not. But
Twitter's up.
Okay.
We
Follow
definitely
us
need
on
to do more
Twitter.
there, but yeah, follow us. We promise. We are trying to get better.
And be sure to check in every week for more Agents of M.A.C.E. Hey there, agents. It's me, Drew, here for this week's fact check. So, to dive right in, the first thing we wanted to fact check this week was Ravonna Renslayer and where exactly she came from. She is the daughter of King Corellius, ruler of the 40th century Earth, which is Earth 6311, if you want to look it up. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there. Her first actual appearance was in Avengers number 23. So go check out the Renslayer family, and it'll kind of help you figure out what this may be a reference to down the line in the Loki show. So the next thing we wanted to fact check was where exactly is the Time Variant Authority's hideout, or whatever you want to call it. It is actually located in the Null time zone, which is exactly what it sounds like. It exists outside of time and is utilized by the Time Variance Authority as their base of operations. Some points of interest here are the Department of Redundancy Department, the Departure Gate, the Hall of Chronometry, the Hall of Discontinued Universes, the Time Cells, and the Time Courts, which is something that we got to see in this first episode of Loki. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was a mention of Nexus in Age of Ultron. And sure enough, it is mentioned there. The Nexus Internet Hub is the biggest internet exchange point on Earth, located in Oslo, Norway, according to Tony Stark in Age of Ultron. And actually, while Tony was hacking into Nexus, that's when he finds out that Jarvis, who we thought had been erased, was actually scattered across the internet, trying to block Ultron. So I'm not sure how deeply this ties in with Nexus beings or the Nexus event, but it was a little nod towards Nexus. That does it with our fact check for this week. Be sure to check in next week when we talk about Episode 2.